Well, hello and welcome to Stamp Chat. My name's Heidi Rhodes. One of the most common ways to overcome resistance to change is to educate people about it beforehand. Communication of ideas helps people see the need for and logic of a change. The education process can involve one-on-one discussions, presentations to groups, resources, and how-tos. Because the concept of online exhibiting is so new, the conversation today will shape the future. And this is where we begin today on part 2 of online exhibiting. Our esteemed international panel of judges and webmasters are here to answer your questions, address your concerns, and of course, listen to your suggestions regarding online exhibiting. Stamp Chat is a production of the American Philatelic Society. Since 1886, the APS has served collectors with the services and support they need. With membership starting at just $25, you can join 135 years of international fellowship in the hobby and start taking advantage of member benefits now. Whether you're researching, shopping on Stamp Store, or renewing your membership, it's stamps.org. Well, welcome all to the Future of Online Exhibiting, Part 2. Let's start by introducing our panelists. We have Mr. Larry Fillion from Boston, Massachusetts. He's the webmaster for the American Association Philatelic Exhibitors and the current president of Malaria Philatelists International. Mr. Colin Fraser from Woodstock, New York. Mr. Fraser has judged at exhibitions in every continent except Antarctica. Along with Richard Maisel, Fraser established the series of digital philatelic exhibitions in conjunction with the American Stamp Dealers Association. Ms. Elizabeth Heisey from Sarasota, Florida. Ms. Heisey is the chairman of the APS Committee of Accreditation. Mr. Ross Jones is a project manager for the American Philatelic Society and joins us from Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. Mr. Behrooz Nasrat initiated the Iran Study Circle's IPSC first virtual exhibition. Mr. Nasrat joins us from San Francisco, California. Mr. Marcus Orsi joins us from London. Mr. Orsi is leading a team in the development of the Museum of Philately website and app project, an online interactive philatelic museum platform aimed at keeping great philatelic collections alive for future generations. Mr. Simon Richards from the UK, chairman of the Association of British Philatelic Societies Exhibitions Committee, which is responsible for UK participation in international shows and for organizing the UK national shows. He is an FIP traditional judge and has acted as UK commissioner to several international shows. Mr. George Struble from Salem, Oregon. Mr. Struble is webmaster for the Salem Stamp Society and for the Northwest Federation of Stamp Clubs and does most of the Pipex exhibits web posting. He's been Pipex exhibit chair since 2014 and is excited that Pipex 21 is the first virtual World Series of Philately show. And Mr. Joel Weiner, vice president of the Society of Israel Philatelists and director of the Royal Philatelic Society of Canada, joins us from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Now, before we begin, we invite each of our panelists to expand on their affiliations and their involvement in online exhibiting. Let's go ahead and start with Larry Fillion.
How's everybody doing? Hopefully well. I'm going to share my screen just for a minute to show you the American Association of Philatelic Exhibitors website. We've been showing the exhibits up there for probably 10 plus years, maybe 15. We have 206 exhibits. You just scroll down, essentially, you just click on an exhibit. We have a frame view. And then you click on the image and you can view it. And then you can go page to page. If this was multi-frame, you'd go frame to frame. We also have a separate section that we had for the single frame Champion of Champions from this year. And I have code behind the scenes that gets used on this website and on the United Nations Philatelist website. The same exhibits are on both. And also on my malaria website. Now that's an awesome exhibit. Oh, that's mine. Same thing. So they all work the same. You click on the image, you can go from page to page, frame to frame. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Larry. Next, please, Mr. Colin Fraser.
I'm Colin Fraser from Woodstock, New York. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you all. And my involvement with digital or virtual exhibiting goes back to actually the early 2000s. As Heidi mentioned, the American Stamp Dealers Association under Joe Savarese and Arthur Morowitz came up with a concept of what we termed at the time digital philatelic studies, which embraced not just scans of traditional on-paper exhibits, but also included the ability to generate digital files incorporating many of the traditional elements of exhibits: research, personal study, knowledge, and so on. Latterly, last year, I judged the Philavirtue exhibition, which was created in India and was one of the first, or one of the early international exhibitions. And currently, I'm involved with a new virtual exhibition, which involves the celebration of the Abraham Accords between Israel, the State of Israel, and the United Arab Emirates. And the United States is going to be participating in that three-way show to celebrate that unique historical event. Heidi, I think I've said enough.
Okay, well, welcome, Mr. Fraser. Thank you. Next, please, Ms. Liz Heisey, please.
Good afternoon, and also echo Happy St. Patrick's Day. I had the pleasure of being the chairman of the, other than the virtual India show, we went virtual for Sarasota this year because of the virus. We had, as it was the first one, we were not quite sure what we were doing, so we were rather flying by the seat of our pants. We had 80 frames, 3 judges, and 15 seminars over a 3-day period. It was very successful. I would suddenly agree to do it again. There were some glitches, but we've taken the information, excuse me, we have a cattail, taken the information and are trying to make sure that as we go forward, we can have virtual WSP shows and also aiding the shows and the judging of such. I like being part of this because you learn so much and it becomes very helpful. So that's me.
Thank you. Mr. Ross Jones.
So I work at the American Philatelic Society. And I really started with virtual exhibiting in last year's virtual stamp show, where we hosted over 100 exhibits. And it was really quite exciting. And during the last panel, there was a lot of great discussion, and I'm really eager to hear more new things to try out and think about again here today. So thank you all for coming.
Oh, come on.
Thank you. I like that optimistic tone. Thanks. And Mr. Behrooz Nasra. Hey.
Everybody. So as Heidi mentioned, as part of the IPSC, we have been sort of viewing and having exhibits online for a long time, but we actually had our first virtual international exhibit late last year in December. And currently we're actually working on setting up a hybrid live virtual show combination targeted for end of summer to basically provide a physical location for some exhibits, as well as dealers and seminars, plus virtual exhibits that we want to have an experience that the people who are at the show can also view these virtual experiences. And then anybody who's not there can look at all the exhibits no matter where they are. So we're working at this hybrid model that be able to really expand and the global reach and does not require traveling to participate. If you're there, wonderful, but you don't have to be there to really participate. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Next, please, Mr. Marcus Orsi.
Yes, good evening, everyone, or it's good evening from here anyway. Just a little correction. I actually am in Ireland. I'm not in London.
Oh, excuse me.
So I can say Happy Paddy's Day from the Emerald Isle.
All right.
So
what a
no,
faux
no,
pas.
it's okay.
My
No,
bad.
no. I mean, I have nothing against London. It's a great city, but I'm not in London. So, well, one of my, I've got two hats on really, in a sense, tonight. I'm part of the board of the Philatelic Traders Society in London. So I've been involved extensively in the first virtual Stampex last year, and now, of course, involved in the one coming up next week. And that's been fascinating. And I guess part of being part of what's exciting about being part of a group like this is we all have to work together. I really feel that's important in our hobby. You have to work together to look at the past, look at the present, but build for the future. Because we've got a hobby that we all know is wobbling. And this virtual has come in, and I think it's given us a shot, literally a shot in the arm. It's given us an impetus. And I think we certainly in my business, I've seen an uptake in business in general since the pandemic. So I think it's an exciting time for Philately, but we have to seize the moment. The other hat I'm wearing tonight is the virtual, Museum of Philately, which is very similar to Larry's product. We're just dealing with the high end and really trying to bring a very high quality product that touches both expertise. It's kind of a go-to place for the high end collections to bring another view of trying to pull together exhibiting, expertise, rarity, price guides, a little bit of everything. And we're working on it now. There's some 7 or 8 new collections have gone up in the last week or so. So that's exciting. So thank you for inviting me tonight.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Mr. Simon Richards, welcome.
Well, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Well, that is outside London. I'm just outside Oxford, in fact, but it is in the UK. I'm a lifetime collector and really have come to Philately in quite a traditional way. As your interest deepens, I'm particularly interested in the West Indies. You join specialist societies. Eventually you have a bit of time and you volunteer to help the organization out. And from that, in 2011, I started exhibiting internationally, and it's gone fairly well, both postal history and traditionally. I then started volunteering as well to help organizations and became a commissioner for the UK, which I've done several shows in Israel, Estonia, and one or two other countries as well. And then I also became an FIP traditional juror and qualified in Wuhan in 2019, a few months before the outbreak came through and changed Philately. So since then, we've had to do virtual stamp shows in the UK, as Marcus mentioned. The first one last year, we restricted to 1 frames only, as we wanted to make sure the technology was robust. We used a regional level competition and a national competition, both of which were judged, and I judged on the national competitions last year, which was an interesting process. You do have more time to look at the exhibits, and if you've got a decent library, you can still do the research. One of the problems with COVID that some judges found was you can't get into the library to look at more detail at the exhibits. And as Marcus mentioned, we've got the second virtual Stampex next week, where we've got 2 types of show: a qualifying FIP show, as the FIP have actually given dispensation for virtual exhibits to be entered in a real show during 21 and 22. And we've also got a non-competitive show where we'll be very interested to see what formats people adopt. There's no reason why you should restrict yourself to 8 frames. Or any number you like, format, and it'll be interesting to see what we get. We've got about 98 frames, I think, coming in for next week. So you can look out for those on the Stampex website. Thank you.
Absolutely. And the APS will be at Stampex. That's happening next week, March 23rd, no, March 25th through 27th. You can register now. Next, Mr. George Struble, excuse me, Mr. Simon, excuse me, sorry, Mr. George Struble.
Yes, my career was teaching computer science, but I retired 24 years ago, so I don't know anything anymore. But I have been webmaster for several organizations, currently just the Salem Stamp Club and the Northwest Federation of Stamp Clubs. I have been exhibits chair for PIPEX since 2014. And this year, ours is the first virtual Grand Championship Series show, like WSP, but for virtual shows. And that's exciting. My own collecting specialty has narrowed to Swiss airmail, where I have had some exhibiting success. I've just completed the Willamette Valley show for this year. This was a virtual regional show. We had 11 exhibits and everything went smoothly. I used a template to build the exhibits. This worked, but is not nearly as good an idea as the script we have been using for mounting PIPEX exhibits. PIPEX was well positioned to produce a virtual show. Bill Seymour, our webmaster, did all of the computer work for the virtual CPEX show last September. I know much less about HTML code than Bill, but enough to do some things. So that made two of us able to share the workload. Our PIPEX exhibits format included frame views and page views. Bill and I are in full agreement that that provides the best platform for studying and navigating through an exhibit. Bill wrote a script that makes mounting exhibits easy and quick. Once I have downloaded the pages from the exhibitor and named the files properly, it can take as little as 15 minutes to create a little file with a title, upload the files to the website, run the script, then link to the exhibit from the exhibit list. Done. There are special things like quad pages that need manual intervention, but as Bill's script evolved, almost everything is handled automatically. We could have had maybe 70 exhibits, and Bill and I could easily have handled 70 or more. But we set a cap of 50 exhibits to make sure that the virtual judging did not become impossibly unwieldy. We reached our 50 exhibits about 10 days ago. 42 of the exhibits have already been sent to us and are already mounted. They're available, you can see them. We have 11 foreign exhibits and 7 novice exhibitors, though I think some of those have exhibited in their own countries. PIPEX will also have a full set of meetings and presentations. Included will be the judges' critique session, presented as much as possible, like similar sessions at traditional shows. Another session will be presented by Bill Seymour and me, describing our experience putting on the exhibits part of PIPEX. And some of that will be technical. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Struble. Thank you. And finally, Mr. Joel Wiener, thank you for joining us today.
Sure, thanks, and good afternoon to everyone. My audio's on, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I had it muted before. Okay, well, I'm really glad to be participating today. I chair a committee for the Royal Philatelic Society of Canada on exhibiting and judging that's similar to the Canada committee that Liz chairs for the APS. So we've been grappling with the issue of virtual exhibiting, or competitive virtual exhibiting, I should stress, a little different than just virtual exhibiting. And there are a few points. So first of all, we decided to have our first national exhibit, which was CanPEX, which will be in April, but the exhibit's closed in March. March 8th. Well, in fact, we expected maybe 30 exhibits if we were lucky. This would be limited to one frame exhibits. The impetus was to allow for qualification for the International CAPEX 22 to be held in Toronto in June of next year, June 2022. And we were just overwhelmed. We had to close it off at 65 because the judging, as you just heard from others, would have become just too onerous. And we had another 20 exhibits that came in after we put on the web that exhibits were closed, and just had to, we'll have them on the line online, but they won't be competitive. They'll be just there for people to view. And with that success, we decided that because we couldn't have a royal show that we have each year, we're going to have in October a virtual royal show, again using all the software developed for CanPEX. So it will be a royal CanPEX joint exhibit, but this time will be both multi-frame and single frame. And we're in the process now of generating the prospectus for that show, and I'm sure it will also be a really great success. So I'm also as the Commissioner General for CAPEX 22, and we will be at Stampex. We will have a booth at the virtual Stampex next week. So if you have any questions about exhibiting, you can ask the people who will be at the booth. And I'm now looking forward to the questions we get and the discussion of how we deal with competitive virtual exhibiting. My biggest problem is dealing with you know, how we deal with normal exhibiting, where we look at the material and the you know, the storyline, where now we have to add the computer skills of the exhibitor, and how much that varies from person to person, and makes it a lot more complicated. So I'd really like some discussion on that. Thanks a lot.
Well, and thank you. And I think that that's actually a really great place to start, friends. Just so you know, we did aggregate questions from social media, et cetera, and we do encourage participation from our friends that are joining us live. But I think that you bring up a really great point, and you know, if we could expand on that, what Joel was talking about.
If I can say something, I think one of the potential dangers with virtual exhibiting is whether in fact one is judging the philately or the computer skills. And I think this is something that the judging community has to take some recognition for. What is the priority? Is it philately or is it computer skills? That at least is one perspective. I'm sure the other panelists will have perhaps different ideas.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead, Liz. I'll wait.
I think it's something that we're going to have to, as Colin says, we're going to have to address. Currently, it seems that we are just putting up what would have been physical exhibits, putting them up online. A friend of mine has done a whole virtual exhibit using various computer skills. But I see that at the moment as something that we have not prepared ourselves for. And it's something that we're going to have to do. It's coming down as to QR codes, bits of video, I mean, whatever you want to bring in. And I know that there's a lot of concern that people are using computer skills to enhance their item, to make it look better. I think certainly at the moment, we're giving the exhibitor the benefit of the doubt. But, you know, because even in a physical exhibit, we do allow them to have them enhanced, I mean, you know, to be repaired or stuff, providing they tell you. But it's something, and how we start to judge a proper virtual show. It's rather like in Sarasota, Sescal, we have an article literature competition, which is a pure article. And in that one, it is the computer skills and how they're using the media to do their article, as opposed to a literature show where you're just critiquing and judging a book. So we have started doing it slightly, but not on a philatelic level.
Yeah, so I just want to, first of all, on the computer skills or whatnot, even right now, you go to real shows, people who have good desktop publishing skills, put out high-end skills, show their computer skills in their exhibiting, and they're actually getting better grades right now versus a very old school something that was put together a long time ago. So that is already happening in physical exhibiting. So I don't think there's any difference with that. It's just your presentation skills in whatever media you're using is whoever has better presentation skills will have it. So that's one idea. But I agree that that's something that the judges have to take into account and how much influence it has on their points. But the other one is when you go to virtual exhibiting, right now we're not really using any of the true potential of interactive exhibiting. You can sort of click on a video to get more detail. You have a map you can get in the middle of it and actually get much more detail on these things. You can follow an exhibit in a different way by just selecting a route to go through it, and the exhibit can guide you to what to see next. And there's all sorts of stuff you can do virtually that we're not even doing. Not even 1% of it is done. So I think that is the way you present your stories is a storytelling in a different format and a different fashion. That has to be, it's going to have to evolve over time to where it is.
Marcus, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the challenges, of course, and we in the PTS we're discussing this, is, of course, we don't want to stop physical exhibiting because we're social beings. So the reality is as we move forward with virtual, we have to think, how can we marry the two? Because, we're already planning that hopefully we'll have a Stampex in October. I mean, it may not happen, but we're hoping, or end of September. But then I'm saying to the guys, we have to have a virtual aspect of that show. So that's another question to throw into the mix is, as we move forward with virtual, we have to realize that the physical is still going to be very, very important. So how do we marry those two? And the other thing that one point to pick up on, which is kind of scary, if you have a virtual exhibit, so it's never been physical, so it's only been put together virtually, how can you, and I'm not casting aspersions, but how can you be sure that the items that are being exhibited are actually owned by the collector? Because that's a hugely complex thing to control. How do we know? So that's
Heidi, if I can pick up a little bit on Marcus's point, it's a really, really significant issue. And if I can double back to the digital philatelic studies back in 2005, I think it was 2004, 5, 6, that period, we took what at the time was a very controversial decision, and it brought a lot of criticism from, shall I call it, the established judging community. That's a sort of a roundabout way of saying that the established judges. We said, if you were publishing a book or you were publishing an article and you need an illustration of an item to tell a significant part of your story, which you don't own, you would go to the Smithsonian, you'd go to the British Library, you'd go to the Royal Collection, and you'd ask to use an illustration. You'd acquire the illustration and you'd use it with acknowledgement, with full acknowledgement and full disclosure of the source for that illustration. And in doing our digital philatelic studies, we said, listen, what is the difference? And this is an interesting question. What's the difference between an exhibit, a philatelic exhibit, and an article where you would use illustrations? Give people the opportunity to complete their research, their knowledge, to exhibit their knowledge and the study that they've done by being able to incorporate with full acknowledgement of the source of an illustration. And it was very interesting, the reaction. A number of people said, oh my goodness, this is a tremendous step forward. This really allows me to tell my story in a more complete way. And as I say, the established judging community at the time was like, this is anathema. This is a terrible idea. You know, you're going to have people using things that they don't own. And I guess one of the questions, and this is one of the whole things, a lot of the virtual stuff you read, and you look at a lot of the social media posts, is philately based on ownership, or to what extent is it more based on the process, research, knowledge, study? And that's a very broad question. It'd be really interesting to hear what some of the other panelists think is the emphasis between physical ownership, actually controlling the items, versus this broader approach of knowledge, study, research, and all of these different dimensions.
Well, the bottom line is we're collectors. Yeah. And as collectors, we want to have the material. My other life, I do research, and, you know, that's different. And you know, these are two different things. So if I want to write an article, that's fine. If I want to prepare an exhibit that is, quote, an article, I have no problem with that. But as a collector, I still want to see my collection. I want to exhibit my collection, because that's what I've been able to put together over many, many years. And one of the things we look at is difficulty of acquisition. And if you take that away, because I can go to the library and just get a picture, it's a completely different sort of exhibit. And we have to, I have no problem with that. I think it's a great idea, but we have to keep it separate from, I think, competitive exhibiting, the way we've talked about it in the past. I'd like to hear what other people think.
Mm-hmm. Liz, go ahead.
I think this, again, as I said earlier, we're going to see a diversion, a division. At the moment, we're judging physical exhibits virtually, with the expectation that they can be shown either virtually or physically. So they've got to be able, that currently they are moving from one to the other. So if you're showing physically at Pipex and you want to show at CPEX, which will be physical, maybe, you need to have the same exhibit move. But if you're going to have a virtual exhibit, as Colin was saying, then those will not move to a physical basis. They will be virtual. So that will give everybody a lot more scope. With the 7th edition of the manual, we have said up to the exhibitor, you tell us what you're going to do and we will judge you how well you've done it. So if it's going to be a virtual and they're going to bring in these esoteric items or whatever into a virtual show, if they've done it well, then we should be able to judge as we do the others. So I think there's going to be, they're going to divide. There's going to be two lanes in the road, and I don't think they're going to be interchangeable. Larry?
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point, once you don't own the items, it's not fully an exhibit as we call an exhibit. And now it's either literature, or maybe it's a new class where, you know, the first class has come out where you can add non-philatelic material, and it gets judged differently, where maybe you're getting points for finding the correct item in another exhibit to figure out which, you know, because if you don't have the best cover, you can find one in someone else's if they allow you to use it, which may be part of the problem also is, can I just grab an image off eBay and use it in an exhibit? Do you actually have the digital rights for that? It's going to open up a lot of doors that we may not want opened.
Well, the key thing is, if you're going to use an illustration, and this was, and I mentioned this, you have to acknowledge your source. You can't just, you know, pull things out of cyberspace and plop it in. You have to appropriately get permissions and acknowledge where you took it from. I mean, I like Liz's idea of this kind of two roads in parallel. I mean, I think this is an interesting development.
Yeah,
Marcus, did you want, excuse me.
No, that's okay. It's okay.
Sorry, I was just going to come in. There are interesting parallels with just doing any form of presentation digitally versus physically. You know, we're used to also not just exhibiting, but also showing our material to societies. Now we've had to present it digitally, and you get those who simply take the pages from their album and present those in a presentation. And actually that quickly becomes quite dull and difficult to keep the concentration going. And you realize that you actually need to show your material in a different way if you're going to engage a digital audience. And I think the same is very much true with exhibiting, but it'll be quite difficult to keep everything to one rule book. I mean, they must diverge and become different things over time, the rules in a physical exhibition, because why would you just replicate it virtually? You can do so much more. If you want to put video in it, why not? But that'll be hopeless at a physical exhibition. So I do see there's going to be a divergence, and it'll be increasingly difficult to keep to one rule book, but they're both value paths, and some will definitely want to pursue them, and we are finding new audiences doing it. So, you know, we have to bear that in mind as well.
Please go ahead, Liz.
And I think, I mean, we have to come up with the second rule book. I mean, we have to, I mean, as we did with the article judging, that had although it's still literature, but because it was articles, there was a whole different set of guidelines that the judges were given to look at the articles. And I think this is something that hopefully somebody is going to say, okay, I'll do it, is to come up with a basis of the second path.
Yeah, and I think it has to include mechanism for item verification, ownership verification, other kind of things. Instead of pulling something off of a frame to inspect by expert committee jurors, it has to be baked into the guidelines and the process, and people have to be fully aware of that these particular requirement might be required. A third party has to see the item, or you have to send this kind of scan of both sides of the item or something. There's many other kind of things you can do to ensure that you get something. So there are other mechanisms for that, and it has to be included.
That was definitely a concern. In fact, that was one of the comments that came off of social media. As a user of Photoshop, I realized how easy it would be to manipulate images of covers and probably stamps in an exhibit. During the first Future of Philately online exhibiting panel discussion, one of the panel members stated that one would have to trust exhibitors about this. I do not find it reasonable to expect all exhibitors to be honest. We leave it at that. I mean, that was definitely something, and I think that we'll be getting more questions about that in comments. Let's go ahead and hit the Q&A box here and diverge a little bit. What does the committee think of the South African virtual exhibition now in its third year? Liz.
I've taken part in it 2 years ago. I sent 2 exhibits, a postcard exhibit and a illustrated mail exhibit. It was, you scanned it and sent it, and they put the pages up. It's a one frame competition. The postcard did quite well. The illustrated mail didn't, because they thought it was postcards. So there was a little sort of a disconnect, I think, that the judges were given. I have a friend who judged it this past year and enjoyed it, and I think it's well worth doing. I mean, they broke ground. I mean, they were the first ones to come up and do it, and everybody. I mean, my husband is a great proponent of this, of Savapex, and I think it's thank them for doing it, because they broke the ground. They led us.
Thank you, Liz. Who are the U.S. commissioner or commissioners for CAPEX 2022, if selected? Joel, do you know?
I don't know who they are yet, but
Okay.
I hope the APS will let me know pretty soon.
Yeah, that will be decided by the International Committee. Jim Mazeppa is the head of that. So if you can contact him, he might know.
Yeah, well, he's in contact with Charles Verge, and I think
Yeah.
they're trying to work that out right now.
Thank you. We had 2 fully virtual exhibits at CPEX last fall. They were both PowerPoint exhibits, but with scans of the items. Thoughts?
No, I think that's the quickest way of just literally scanning your existing exhibits without having to do anything computer and just send the images in. That's something that at its basis, that's the first thing people should do. There's nothing fancier is required. Just that, and that works totally fine.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment on that also. And a couple of times people have mentioned scanning their exhibits. I mean, that is bypassed by many exhibitors. If you produce your exhibit in well, not PowerPoint, I guess, Publisher or whatever else, you just save as PDF, yeah, InDesign, and then you just save as images and you're done. And so,
yeah,
but you have to scan all your items.
I mean, that's the best way and is the cleanest online. But I mean, you can just scan your page if you have to. That's totally fine too.
All right, well, we can definitely come back to that because I think that that's an area that we'll want to explore further. George Struble is obviously one of our panelists, but he had written to me prior to the first panel, and then he wrote again. And so I would like to invite Mr. Struble to share his thoughts. He attended on the heels of the first one, right after writing an article in the Philatelic Exhibitor on virtual exhibiting. And upon receiving his email, I asked if Mr. Struble would join us on the panel. So George, Mr. Struble, would you expand on those thoughts and what you'd like to share?
Thank you. I wanted to talk about hyperlinks in virtual exhibits. As we read documents online, we're used to hyperlinks, hypertext, a phrase or a name, often in blue, and we know we can click on it for more background. The whole internet is built on that idea. So if we're doing virtual exhibits, that tool should be available to us. It can be especially valuable to people like me who tend to overwrite our exhibits. You have seen exhibits that are overwritten. The judge says, if you want to write all that text, write an article. I did write an article. So this is my way of separating parts of that article that are necessary parts of the story from those necessary for judges and viewers with limited time. I could and did put some hyperlinks in my exhibit, my virtual exhibit. But this is not a sustainable solution. When my exhibit goes to a physical show again, those links can't work. But the same idea has been used in physical exhibits. A few exhibits have included QR codes. I believe Janet Klug may have been the first. She has written about it. You can scan the QR code with your phone and see the supplemental information on your phone. So that's one idea. Make subsidiary information available without cluttering our exhibit pages. And 2 implementations, mouse clicks and QR scanners. But with Larry Filion's mentoring, I have merged the 2. Thank you, Larry. And let me show you, if I may share the screen for a couple minutes.
Please do.
I don't see a button that I can share the screen.
On the bottom, there's a green
The share screen at
share screen.
the bottom of your screen.
Oh, yes, yeah, there it is.
There you go.
I was used to seeing it on the top. And let me just have to find it here. Oh, where'd it go?
George, you want me to do it? I can do it if you want. I have your page up.
Hey, perfect.
Okay.
Teamwork.
All right.
Great. Thanks,
No
Larry.
problem. Let me just get to
I
it.
thought
There
I
we
had it
go.
up here, but it doesn't
Not a
show.
problem. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes, sir. Beautiful.
All right.
Okay.
You may speak to it if you want, George.
Thank you, thank you. This is page 2 of my exhibit. It's Pipex Exhibit 20 if you want to find it and check it later. And there are 2 QR codes. Now you can scan one of those with your phone right now if you're fast enough, but you can go to the Pipex website and try it later to see a fuller account of the 1919 airmail service. A really full account could take 2 exhibit frames, but this is 1 page, just enough to support the 1920 story. But you can also click on it with your mouse. And there is the page. And now the important thing here is that the same printed page can be mounted in the frames of a physical exhibit, not the subsidiary page, but this page too. And you can't use a mouse click there, but you can scan the QR code with your phone. And same thing with this second QR code. You get a different thing. And there are others on pages 4, 9, and 10 of this exhibit. Now, how does this work? Do I have a special mouse that can read QR codes? Oh no, I don't think that exists. But how do mouse clicks ordinarily work? There is an area on a web page that has been sensitized to accept a mouse click or keypad click, and then instructed what to do with that click. A web page may have many such areas mapped onto it. The technical term in HTML code is map. So I map the area containing that QR code to respond to a mouse click or keypad click and take you to the subsidiary page. As far as the mouse is concerned, that area could have contained a photo of your least favorite politician or the words "click here," which Larry tells me is impossibly 20th century. Now, this is one way I was able to mine the possibilities of online exhibiting. In this case, I was fortunate to tie the idea back into physical exhibits. This may not be possible for other extensions of the capabilities of online exhibits. Judges will have to wrestle with the use of hyperlinks and maybe give some guidelines or judging rules. I think I can hear, "Judge only what's in the frames." With this exhibit, I am comfortable with that. Other people's use of hyperlinks may be different. I should stop here. Bill Seymour and I will show more detail in our seminar during Pipex. I should mention Pipex is the 7th to 9th of May. But we may want to have more discussion on the proper use of this tool and, less important to me, what judges should do when they see it. Thank you.
Beautifully delivered, George. Would anyone like to speak to that?
I mean, I just want to say, George showed just a tip of the iceberg of what can be done virtually and not. And this is a easy way of going back and forth between the two. The fact is, if you're in a show, are you going to get your iPhone out and quick, scan and click on it or not? That's the question to see. Is it going to actually benefit somebody who's physically there or not? But it's a great tool to use. And this can, basically having a website or HTML page and you can put whatever you want in it is just, as I said, opens up a huge plethora of other things to do. I think it's great.
I think one of the, if I can just say something, I think one of the issues, this is, I think, more beneficial to the general public who might be visiting a show and looking at the exhibits, rather than necessarily for the judges who are generally working to a deadline and they're moving forward and they have a limited period of time to view the physical exhibits. Again, assuming we're talking about a physical exhibition. But in terms of the general public, this certainly opens up a huge opportunity to make philately more accessible.
Marcus, go ahead.
I had it in mind for the general public, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Colin, you're absolutely right. I think that, and that's my passion with the Museum of Philately. We've got to build for the future, and the younger generation needs something other than just what we love about our hobby. They need something else. And, you know, just as George said, your hyperlinks could be historical, could be geographical, could be to do with the provenance. Who is Caspari? Who was Caspari? You know, so it takes on, you know, as Beirut said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you know, video content, because that's in the end, the hyperlink is the beginning, but the end is video, it's Snapchat, it's all the different things that the modern world is about. We have to embrace, because the younger generation, I mean, when I say younger, I mean people in their 40s, not, you know, not in their 20s, people in their 40s, and those in the 20s are coming along. We've got to be there with this. So I think what you're saying, Beirut, is right. This is the beginning, but we've got to shoot for the stars.
I just want to add, sorry, one quick thing. A friend of ours has put together an amazing postmark book on iBook, which you can click on it. It shows maps, all sorts of stuff. We tried to send it for judging. They said they wanted a hard copy. I said, that is useless, hard copy of anything. So next time we literally had to send the iPad over for them to go look at, because they had no facility. And they were saying, send us a CD, which is, again, so in literature, we're going to run into this problem as well. Sorry, Heidi, go ahead.
No, not at all. Liz, go ahead.
Talking about that, Bob, my husband, wrote a book and it's on a flash drive. And he sent the flash drive to the APS to be judged literature. So they did do it 3 years ago.
But that's not interactive. Some of these iBooks require.
Oh, yeah, okay, but I'm talking about
they have interactive items. Yeah.
They have gone beyond the hard reading, needing a hard book.
Okay, so go ahead, Joe.
For CAPEX 22, we're going to have a literature competition, and right now we're dealing with that exact question. How do we deal with interactive literature, and how is that going to be submitted? How are the judges going to judge it? And you know, what are the guidelines? And I'm not sure we have that all sorted out yet.
Well, and we'll definitely pick that up, Larry.
In October, the United Nations Club is having a WSP show at the American Philatelic Society. And one of the questions is why not just put a monitor in a frame? Right. And our plan is it's going to be a physical show, and only those ones will be judged. But we're going to talk to the APS about getting maybe a 50-inch monitor there for some Germans who can't send their stuff over, and they'll be able to view the exhibits that couldn't make it to the show. So it's kind of a hybrid, but they won't be judged. But at least those ones, if they're if they have clicks and whatever else, people will be able to see that, be able to click on it. So
the great thing about the hyperlinks and all that, and I think maybe Colin mentioned this, I know we were talking earlier, how does a judge look at the literature to do with an exhibit? Well, the great thing is if you can do it, and of course, this is one of the questions I have, is will philatelic libraries begin to think about having books that are in their libraries available in a virtual world? Because that's the next thing. Because of course, if we want to find out more about a subject, we need to buy the books. Well, for a start, the books aren't available, or they're in libraries. Well, you can't all fly to the RPSL or to the Collectors Club. So the question is, what's the future of virtual libraries and how is, I mean, a lot of books, you know, big universities. My father was a lecturer at Trinity College in Dublin, and all the major book libraries now are putting their stuff on digitally.
Well,
So-
and why I was jumping is because I have an anthropological background, and what I find so fascinating is, you know, I think that comment about should we just have a monitor, you know, was more like, So how are we dealing with, or are we dealing with, you know, in layman's terms, old school versus new school, particularly after this quantum leap that COVID-19 pushed us into? Does anybody want to talk about that? How we're going to assuage the, you know, our fellow collectors and make sure that we don't have fraction. And I mean, last time the chat box was just, you could almost see it was a generational thing. So would anybody like to take that one?
Adi, let me raise a couple of thoughts. I think one of the frictions which comes is I think the fear that the establishment has of change. I mean, our hobby, for better or worse, is an innately conservative one. It doesn't embrace change very well. And I think one of the examples, and I'm going to say something controversial here, we've seen a tremendous amount of energy and innovation and creativity on a kind of a national level. Here in the States, the APS has taken a lead. In the UK, virtual Stampex has really come to the fore. And you look at Philately in India, you look at what Behrooz has done with the Iranian Society. They had a virtual exhibition in Bangladesh. The one organization which is perhaps the most, from the outside, one of the most conservative is that of FIP, the international FIP, the coordinating body internationally. And sadly, they are probably one of the least prominent in innovating and embracing this whole virtual question. I mean, we have coming up in 2026, Boston, the next internet. What would you like to see as the virtual presence at Boston 2026? Marcus, what would you like to see as the virtual presence at this FIP exhibition, assuming it's going to be an FIP supported show, which I'm sure it will be? How do we get the body that's kind of sitting on top of the international side of Philately to start innovating and start leading us in this virtual direction?
Well, you know, there's a terrible expression.
Stopped everybody speaking.
No, there's a terrible expression: if you snooze, you lose. And I'm not saying that about FIP, but to a certain extent, they have to come along. So I think, yes, we do need to. And I mean, I'm sure there are people here who know people in the FIP, and I think something has to happen. I think what's the question, one of the questions I was going to ask, which is exactly down this road, is there going to be a global body to I mean, in other words, we've got the FIP, but if they don't come along, we've got to all work together. So it would be smart to create a body that does that. Now, if it's the FIP, well and good, but if not, we've got to work together to create one.
I just want to say something back to the whole point of virtual shows. This is if you guys go back to the dates of the days of wired copper hardline phone. I don't know how many has actually phone coming to their homes with wires. This is something that a lot of the Western civilizations had, a lot of the Western countries had, and a lot of the third world countries, some of the countries that had less technologically advanced in it, they took a huge leap in wireless. They, instead of trying to wire everything up, they start getting wireless and Wi-Fi and mobile phone working across the globe. You go in the middle of Africa, all over the place, wherever, it's there. This is actually, it will democratize a lot of things and takes a leap forward for many countries who cannot and do not participate right now. And this will absolutely let them leapfrog the companies who are used to the wire line, who are used to the little copper line phone coming to their home. This will absolutely happen, and we have to embrace it. And FIT, I think, is trying to be a global thing, but it's not really appeasing to the vast majority of the countries that do not have the rich philatelic background of some of the countries that we're used to doing that. And this is a huge advantage for them if they really embrace it. I just don't see structurally for them be set up for it right now. It might change and it might be generational change. I just don't see it as it's set up right now.
So to juxtapose, just, and I won't beat a dead horse, I promise, but, in the one chat we have, what is meant by computer skills and why are they important? So, there's that. And then unfortunately, based on our club, many collectors have not made the leap from old school to new school. Our club, North Toronto Stamp Club, had an exceptionally successful virtual exhibit last year, but it took a lot of work to help some exhibitors get their exhibits suitable to show online. Anybody wants to speak directly to that? If not, we can go into one of the biggest questions that I hear, people beating the drum is, okay, if this is where we're going, how do I learn? Where do I go? This one, Randy Neal's book, To Learn Exhibiting, where can I learn online exhibiting? So I think we need to help people find some resources, and perhaps we could speak to that right now. Liz.
I think from what we've been talking about, the online exhibiting, okay, there's the one thing is of taking a physical exhibit and having it scanned and putting it virtually. I mean, that's one thing to do. And that I don't think is very complicated for people to do. You need somebody on the show's website committee who can upload the exhibits. I think where we're probably talking about, and what we've been talking about today, is where are we going to go with QR codes, with hyperlinks? Is there somebody who can write a basic paper? I mean, you showed up, George's showed up the Bill Seymour's virtual exhibiting script for uploading. Maybe we need somebody to do something like that on the where you can go for exhibiting. I haven't had a chance to look at this friend of mine who did a virtual exhibit. He sent it to me on Monday and I haven't had a chance. But it'll be interesting to see what he's included and then to go back and say, okay, write down what you did. I mean, maybe that's the way we need to start. We need to have somebody start writing down what they've done to do a virtual exhibit.
Oh.
Let's hear from Ross. Thank you.
So one of the things that I guess really I think is an important talking point of thought is, so with like what I'll call the more traditional style of scanning an existing exhibit and uploading it, we've seen a lot of success with that in the last year and a half, 2 years. But I do think it's important to note that there are some like digital aspects of that don't quite line up with an in-person show. Like there really is, as depending on your country and where you're doing business, some sense of obligation that your scanned items needs to be, compliant with screen readers and compliant with keyboard navigation. And I know that for many of us and for many of our sites, that's not always the case. And so that is one aspect of being digital that even in what I'll call the most true to the physical exhibiting is very different from physical exhibiting. Like I would consider it unusual if I arrived at a physical exhibit to expect it to interface with me in a non-visual way, whether that's through sound or through a readable, text. But in the online world, I think that's a really important thing to consider, especially as we go forward and especially as we like establish some sort of like base guideline, even for this least technical of the virtual exhibitings, just a scanned PDF posted online, because there are some rules and there are some like common good sense guidelines, especially regarding, those kind of access issues.
Marcus.
I mean, why don't we, and this is coming back to my question about which nobody picked up on. You know, do we want to have a body to drive, you know, an international body to drive this virtual world that we want to create? Do we create a body to do that? And if we could create a body, then that body could pull together resources to write programs. I mean, come on, guys, it's not, you know, to actually write code and create a product that we can perhaps even license and rent or sell or whatever to collectors. I mean, that's really what it is, you know, and it's not.
I mean, absolutely. And it doesn't even have to go that far. Even from a simple scanning, there should be a standard of how you should scan your product, what color space you should use, what filters not to use. There was a question that you have to enhance when you're scanning. Absolutely not. You should turn off every freaking feature these scanners have and not do any of those. That's the whole point of it. So we should just tell them, hey, this is how you scan it. This is the exact resolution. This is what it is. So at least the scans are going to be as apples to apples as possible. There are other things. So, I mean, there are bare minimum you start with, then you can get into all these other ones. But I agree, even that should be standardized.
But every scanner is different. Depending on the brand, you find that the colors are different. I mean, I've looked, ones we use at work and the ones I use at home, they're different brands, and the scans are not comparable. The colors are slightly different.
But Joe, I mean, I know, I mean, there are solutions for that. There are very simple standard color chart. You ask anybody to scan this one chart first, and then you scan whatever they want. So you can adjust them. So there are solutions for that, but at least you know what they did to scan it.
Yeah, exactly. But then you need to set a set of standards that everybody follows.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's the basic standard you need to have as bare minimum, let alone programs or anything else.
Or, I mean, there's two problems, I think, that we're speaking to. One is for the exhibitor, that, I mean, technically you should really never scan an exhibit. I think you scan the items, and you need to really use a tool like InDesign or Publisher, and you can move things around. You have headers. I do know some people that use individual Word docs for each page, and that's got to be awful when you add a new page and you have to change 48 pages. The other one is for the websites themselves. There are a lot of tools out there for what Ross was talking about, accessibility. There's a Wave tool out there. There's a CSS validator tool, spell checker tools, HTML validation, CSS validation. They're all free out there. You just go to these sites, you put in your URL, and you can find all your errors. I do mine weekly, and I fix 5 or 10 every week. I just put the stamps.org homepage. They have one accessibility error there, and they have some contrast issues. But every week, what I try to do, I have plenty, trust me. But I mean, every week I try to go in and clean things up. The problem is these websites have to be updated all the time. When they take HTML elements and they're not usable anymore, the deprecated is the word. You want to use CSS because then you have responsive design. I mean, it's a lot of work to keep your website up to code. And I mean, I have 10 websites I manage, so obviously I can't get to it all. But I mean, I really think exhibitors need to be using better tools than Word or whatever it is they're using.
Yes.
Just listening to you talk, I mean, to me, a lot of it was gobbledygook. I mean, I'm just not that techie. And I think this is a problem that we're dealing with I mean, I love Zoom. I mean, I can do Zoom, but a lot of what you were saying, the average exhibitor doesn't know. And the average show, I mean, Pipex and CPEX are very lucky. They got George and they got Bill Seymour. Sarasota, our guy did a great job, but it was very basic. APS has got Russ. There is a lot of shows have a financial problem. So trying to find somebody, a volunteer who's willing to spend the time, or find somebody who's willing to, or to pay for somebody. So again, this goes back to, I think, from what I'm hearing, is that we need somebody to take control, either of leading us, the exhibitors, leading FIP, but we've all been talking, we need a body to say, okay, this is what we need. who's going to do it, and how are we going to dispense the information?
Yeah, in the last talk, I think I volunteered Ross, didn't I?
I do remember
For
that.
I mean, I can do it, but I think you want an institution like APS. I will volunteer 200 hours in the next year to work with the APS, work on stuff. I'll volunteer. George will help. I mean, we need a bunch of webmasters to get together to figure out, is there a way we can host something somewhere that any of these WSP shows or non-WSP shows, they want to host things virtual. What do they have to do? And then it has the frame view page by page, the scan in, scan out, whatever it is. I mean, it's not brain surgery for the people that are technical.
No.
The question is spending the time to let everybody use it.
Well, here's something. I've been involved with David Feldman Company for 40 years. So we developed years ago a automatic page layout program. So our catalogs, our auction catalogs, are laid out automatically. Okay, so that means for Liz, just the person who says I don't know anything, you've got a bank of images in a file. Okay, and they all have a number. Okay. And then you literally, it is clicking a button. You say, okay, I want to lay out my catalog or my exhibit. And you push a button and you've decided what's going on where and how it's going. You push a button and bang, it's done. Now there's some tweaking around, but it's the basic layout's done. So the technology is there.
Oh yeah.
Is there. And we've been doing this for at least 15 years.
Yeah.
So of course it's the technology's improving now and getting better, and the hyperlinks and all that's extra, but the actual technology's there. It isn't rocket science. It can be done.
Marcus, and I think just back to that, right now, anybody without a single code, writing a code, there are good, high quality commercial web hosting sites who can build the site and actually put image galleries or whatever you want to up without knowing a single of these gobbledygook. It completely works fine. You can change the way it looks. It's just like anything else so they're available. It's not, you don't have to be webmasters to put some of these things together. Now, what we can do is to have a website or something that people can go get guidelines. Hey, go to this place and take this from here, and then you can use it. So there are different flavors of it. You can do that, but you absolutely can. All we're doing is showing up images 90% of the time. The rest of it is not as complicated as it should be in these things. So they're available, and we can make it available to anybody who wants to do it.
Well, maybe APS should put on their website maybe they should pull together and give a list of these things of where you can go, what you can do. I mean, we all have, all you guys have different things. Is there one place that you can say, I can go there and all 10 of us can find it?
Well, I think taking up something that Liz is saying, and I think at the moment, and as an outsider, it feels like a lot of people, they're all full of energy, but they're all pulling in different directions. One person has this idea, one person has this idea, one person feels this is the best way of packaging the exhibits. I think it comes back to finding a common ground, finding a standardized approach. And it shouldn't just be the US doing its thing in isolation. I think going back to Marcus's idea, we really want to see an interchangeably kind of universal system that could be used in Bangladesh, that could be used in Australia, that could be used by shows in the US, so that in turn, the exhibitors, the collectors, can kind of move seamlessly into different forums to present their exhibits. At the moment, as an outsider, it seems just incredibly confusing. Different shows, different formats. These guys want PDFs, these ones want JPEGs, these ones say 300 DPI, this one says something else. If there was a sort of a universal basis that everybody could agree on to make things easy to move around, to participate in different shows in different countries at different levels. I mean, I think that's in a sense, that's the elephant in the corner of the room, is how do we get an agreed upon standardization that people in different countries, different communities, in the broad sense, are willing to work with?
Well, you know, I mean, I'm not a computer person myself, but basically a database, right? And everybody all around the world understands a database. A database has the data. So yeah, that's your description, the description of your item. And then you have an image, and the image is connected to the data. And then you can export that data into Excel or into anything you want. And then you have a program that sucks up the data. That's really, and that is, I mean, that's world accepted everywhere. So all you need is a database, and their database, I mean, am I right, Beirut?
So I mean, you need a little bit more than that, but I think if the purpose is just to purely be able to show images with description in a uniform fashion across the board, technically, yes. But as we're talking about building stories and actually making it more interactive and whatnot, then it becomes more complicated than there. But I think even the core fundamental is not there. So I think from the how to scan it, how to even get it to this point, that would be a huge advantage, even if we get this part of it done.
Yeah. I mean, I can write up what I've done for the last 15 years, and I can say the easiest way of getting things is definitely a PDF, because otherwise you may get image 1279 and people miss images. You spend the time saying, can you please resend everything? Or they rename page 6 and it's page 7. And so they have duplicate pages. I mean, I have a database. As I said, the same exhibit shows up on the UN website, on the AAP website, and the malaria one, because it's all done in a database. But the problem we have with sharing code is some people use WordPress, some are straight PHP, some are another content management system, which is WordPress. Some is ASP, some is straight HTML. So you can't share code across all those platforms. It doesn't work. The universal thing that all these sites share is it's just an HTML table. HTML tables really is what guides the frame view. And it really is pretty simple to do all that. Some of the stuff just has to be done by hand. And it's a process.
I think it would be easy enough for Bill Seymour and I to write up Bill's script and how to use it. And all it needs is the pages in JPEG form, and you feed it in and you get an exhibit, and it's on the website. And there's some things that could be done to that. It's not it's not a final copy that we want. There are things that Ross Jones could supply with the magnifier he used last August. Put that in, and I think we'd have a very good start.
Then again, we need somewhere. Where is it going to be put? I mean, is APS going to host it as a beginning? But as Colin says, this is, I mean, look at this here. We've got an international panel. So, and there are a lot of people around who aren't participating. So it's, I don't know, it's mind blowing.
Yeah, I don't want to, no gobbledygook here, but George, even that is not as simple as that, because you're making an assumption that you're using a PHP based stack to do your website. You've already made a whole bunch of assumptions that you cannot really do that. So even that is not as super simple as you mentioned. Again, I'll stop the gobbledygook right there, but.
Okay, yes, I can believe that.
Can I pick on something that Liz alluded to there? How long where do you keep the exhibit? How long do you keep it up? It's one of the debates we've had in the UK. Last September, we thought, well, we'll leave it up for the whole month of October, which is how long there was a focus at the beginning week, but the website worked for a month. But we actually left the exhibits on the ABPS website for 3 months. This time round, we've decided to limit it a little bit more, and they'll all be available from the opening of the show till the end of April. and some thought we should have content up there and we may as well leave it up there for a bit, and other exhibitors wanted it taken down. So we've certainly thought this time round we'll make it clear in the rules precisely how long your exhibit is going to be accessible to the public. But there were those who thought, well, you could just leave it there forever. But I'd be interested in other views on that.
Go ahead, Liz.
Sarasota shows that the Sarasota exhibits went up January 1st because we judged at the end of January. We're leaving them up until they get replaced next year.
Thank you.
And the exhibitors were told they'll be up for that period of time.
I think it would be good to leave them up forever, actually, and it will be wonderful to see an evolution of an exhibit as it goes through several versions of it, the same exhibit, as you tweak it, and it will have different version of it also. I think it's wonderful to show that. Storage space online is, I would say, literally zero cost these days, or very close to zero. There's no reason not to do it. There are some website limitation on iNodes, 500,000-600,000 images that you might have to do something a little bit more complicated, but it's going to be a while before we get to these kind of problems.
Just like last time, the time is flying by. So I want to make sure that we cover some of these questions and these themes that we've been hearing about. But first, does an international exhibit mean only in English?
No. And for CAPEX, we're accepting exhibits in Spanish, German, French, and we would like the introductory page to be in, and it can even be in other languages, but it has to be in one of those FIP languages.
Excellent. Again, the same questions from the last time, because the hybrid models, people are very concerned that if they sign on with this online exhibiting, that somehow they're voting for the end of physical shows and exhibits. Can we rest? Can we put this to rest?
I see that hybrid shows, certainly from an exhibiting point of view, currently it's either a virtual exhibiting or it's a physical exhibiting, not half and half. But, and if you're, which is I said way back when we first started this, currently your exhibit is virtual and you want to be able to show it as a physical level too. So it's up to you, that's very static. But I don't think I think also in a lot of these shows is the fact that we've all discovered Zoom. We've all appreciated all the societies that we've been members of, and we couldn't get to the society for their meetings. We can now sit in front of our computer and we can go to London, we can go around the world and take part in meetings. So I think a lot of and I know Ballpex, I think, is planning on having a physical show, but their seminars and their meetings will be virtual. I don't know if that answers the question, but.
And finally, as we wrap up, another issue that people were very concerned of, and maybe that it speaks again to having an umbrella organization where everything can be housed and found, but people are concerned about where can they find videos or references. And also on that same token, they want to learn, but then they want to know where. Is there a database? Is there a website or someplace where they can find out where these online exhibits are, because they're really excited to participate?
If I can jump in on that, there's a couple of aspects to that. One is, where can you find online exhibits? There are a number of sites. There's things like Exponet that has a huge number of basically scanned exhibits from different periods of time. And so that's one aspect to it. Exponet is a good place to start, or a place to start. In terms of sources of information about virtual exhibiting, Fran Adams in San Diego, he kindly took over the digital philatelic studies concept when the ASDA kind of moved in a different direction. Heidi, I will ask Fran if he could send you the link to the website that he has. I was trying to find it on my phone, but I couldn't find it. I'll ask Fran if he can send that to you, and maybe there might be some way you can share that or make that more accessible to people who are interested in the idea of virtual exhibiting.
Absolutely. I'll be sure everyone to be checking stamps.org. There will be a newsroom story about this. And Larry also put in the aape.org/exhibits. Oh, the Philately is. That's a heck of a website, truly. Okay, so we have some, we definitely have some resources. And I did take note, friends. So if you didn't catch those websites, don't worry about it. They will be in the comments section or in the description of the video on YouTube and in the newsroom. Friends, we're coming down the home stretch. Final thoughts. Ross, any final thoughts? I'm going to put each of you on the spot.
All right. Well, I mean, I think the big takeaway is that there's been a lot of really new and exciting things, especially here in this last year. But I think even before that, and personally, I'm really excited to watch and grow as things continue to develop, because I think that it's great to see so many people so motivated to like keep doing this thing that there are literally thousands of people who love to death. You know, this is a great hobby, and exhibiting is a really big part of that, especially competitive exhibiting. And it's just really exciting to see that move forward.
Thank you, Ross. Liz.
I think from listening, we've sort of decided we need an overall body to carry us forward into the next year. And this is not going to go, I mean, it's going to continue to grow. And we will have physical shows, but I think we'll have a lot more virtual shows. I mean, if you think about, I mean, the philatelic population is maturing. And I think this is one way we can get some of the younger collectors in to exhibit, providing we can, to use the new word, pivot,
Right.
and position ourselves to help these new people, younger people coming in.
Thank you. Joe.
Sure. I think that, you know, virtual exhibiting is an incredible opportunity, and we either capture it or it'll pass us by. And I think we need to have things like YouTube tutorials so people can learn how to do things, people who are really expert. We need an organization, an international organization, so that standards are standardized, so that not every place is doing things differently. And I agree. I think this is going to really be an opportunity to bring new blood into the hobby, because there are people who will come at it because they're interested in using their computer skills, and maybe they'll now explore and increase their collecting skills. So I think it's a great opportunity.
Thank you. Larry.
I guess I'll speak to exhibitors, you know, find high quality tools like Publisher, InDesign. You know, there's a bunch of them out there, and start using more and more of those tools and get used to them, so that, you know, when the new features come out, like QR codes, incorporating it in HTML maps, which I guess you won't be able to do in those tools, but you'll be ready for whatever is next with incorporating YouTube videos and, you know, whatever else is in there. You have to stay up on this stuff, and there's free tutorials on every one of those every tool out there. There's free tutorials out there. There's websites everywhere that can help you with, you know, how to use the tools, and you can do Q&A on those sites.
Thank you. Colin. Final thoughts.
Me?
Yes, please.
Okay, I have 4 final thoughts, and I promise to be brief.
Right.
The first is to reassure everybody that really this is not the end of in-person philately. In-person philately has not died. It is going to come through. It will survive. It will evolve after COVID. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, which I brought up earlier, is this question of leadership. Leadership and combined with standardization. We need a kind of the same way that CanEdge and AAPE have worked together and have kind of brought about standards of judging, uniform standards, uniform forms. We need that to kind of move into the virtual arena too. And I think the way of the future, as I mentioned in the article in the FIP magazine last year, controversial article, hybridism is the way of the future, bringing the benefits, the best of in person with the best and the benefits of virtual. That is really where we're going to come out of this whole experience stronger and for the better.
Thank you, Colin. Simon?
Yeah, well, I think we all know that there's a lot of collectors out there that we've never been able to reach in traditional philately because they're collecting on eBay. They're doing a lot of it without realizing how incredibly sociable this hobby can be. And I think COVID is making us adapt to the digital. Hopefully we'll find these collectors and it'll excite them about exhibiting. And they'll want to broaden out and participate in the hobby fully, both digitally and physically. And we may actually just be curating the next generation of serious collectors.
Thank you. Marcus?
Well, a lot of has already been said. I guess my two passions would be what Liz said is that we need a body that is going to do this. And the sooner the sooner we get that done and create it, the better. Because as Colin said at one stage, we're all firing off in different angles. Everyone's got great ideas, but we really have to put something together. I'm not necessarily a promoter of the FIP, but I'm saying that if it's the FIP, let it be them. If it's not the FIP, it's the APS. But let's do it. Because we don't want to be sitting here in 5 years' time still talking about the same things. So I would love this group and others to start really being serious about this. To me, that I think that's that's the key for going future. And then the other thing is what I was saying with Beirut is trying to create a product. Whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 products, that whether they're marketing and you make money out of them, or there's something that the APS can use, something that is easy to use. And I think you'll get an exponential number of people starting to exhibit virtually if they have a product that's easy to use. And I don't think it's so difficult. So those 2 things I think would be game changers.
Thank you. Mr. Stribble?
Nothing more to add.
Okay, fair enough. And Behruz?
Hi. So again, I just want to reiterate what Colin said. I completely agree with it. This is absolutely not the end of. I miss everybody. I would love to go see people. I'm actually itching to go back to a show. So that is still my preference. But I think hybrid is our solution to get the best of the both worlds moving forward. And if you're going to set up a body, as somebody in the comments or questions said, I just hope it has some new, younger body parts in there. I consider, I am actually kind of old even for that body, to be honest. I think we need really younger people to that. But, we're happy to be in there, but it cannot be the same people who are currently doing the stuff. It has to include some of them maybe, but it needs a lot more people who their visions are different and to bring the new ideas and the new people on it. So I'm good with body, but I'm not sure if any of our existing body parts are young enough to do this. We got to get some other ones.
I read that comment too. Thank you for sharing that. Friends, a lot has been shared on today's panel, and I do invite you, whether you're watching live or on the YouTube recording, if you have thoughts, you are more than welcome to use the comment box below the video, or if you would like to get in touch with one of the panelists, or perhaps lend an arm to this potential governing body, you can send an email to Heidi@stamps.org. That's Heidi@stamps.org, and I'll make sure that goes to the right people. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to this international panel of guests who have come today to share their expertise and their time. And of course, to those watching and those who shared their questions and concerns on social. This is part of a conversation that's shaping the future, and I think that we should all be really excited. And I'm happy to hear that we're leaving on an optimistic note. Today's Stamp Chat is brought to you by the Mighty Buck Club. Just $1 a month supports the hobby and aids our mission here at the APS. Last year, Mighty Buck helped fund over 100 Stamp Chats, the Chatty Awards Summer Seminar, and the virtual stamp show. Visit stamps.org and join the Mighty Buck Club, where just $12 a year makes a mighty impact. Thank you for joining us. Please like this video and subscribe to the APS YouTube channel and use the comment box, as I said, to keep that conversation rolling. Until then, connect and collect. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course on stamps.org. APS, social since 1886. Thanks everyone so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.